I think it's a very fair question to ask. Are integrated graphics good enough? But first, let's take a step back. If you're unfamiliar with what integrated graphics are, they are a GPU built directly into the computer's CPU rather than being on a separate card. How that plays out is, for example, take this CPU right here. This is a Ryzen 5 9600X. This happens to have integrated graphics built into it. So this allows you to not only use the CPU, but it also allows you to have a signal to your monitor. Now, if you don't have integrated graphics, so this computer right here behind me actually has an Intel Core Ultra 250KF Plus, that CPU does not. So if I didn't have a dedicated graphics card, the processor would do all kinds of things, but you would never see it displayed on a screen. So what I'm hoping to do today in this video is compare integrated graphics versus the performance you would get adding a cheap graphics card. And in today's video, we have a Ryzen 5 9600X. So again, this central processing unit right here, this CPU, and the 9600X has an entry-level integrated GPU. So it's basically just used to show the monitor display, troubleshooting, and light media usage. So the real question is, how would that compete if you were to throw in, say, a $75 to $80 graphics card? Is it going to be significantly worse or about the same? Well, today we're actually going to be pairing that with that exact 9600X with this RX 580, which is about $75 to $120. In fact, the RX 580 is a budget-friendly entry-level graphics card. It typically sells for around $75 to $200. Now, $200 is way off. You can usually find these anywhere from like the cheapest $50 up to maybe $120, $130. So we'll be comparing it with that. But also, we're gonna go up a little bit in price range to a 1660 Super. Now, that is this card right here. I happen to have a single fan version of it. This is the 1660 Super. I'm holding that so awkwardly there. Anyway, the 1660 Super is a highly popular budget-friendly graphics card released back in 2019. And on average, you can usually find these anywhere from like $100 up to maybe like $160. So we are definitely increasing the price, but not by that much. So we're gonna be running a series of benchmarking tests through 3 different games to establish, is an integrated graphics card good enough? Or if you were to spend a minimal amount of money, I mean, think about it, $80 to $120 is not a lot of money. And you know, if you could put that in your budget, how much are you going to actually see an improvement? And is it worth the money? So we're gonna ask ourselves 3 questions in testing these 3 different games. So number 1, does the game start? Well, actually first, let me tell you the games before we get into that. So the first game is going to be Crimson Desert, which is a more demanding game, and I don't expect a great performance out of any of these options, the integrated or the other 2 graphics cards. The second game is a more standard game if you were to attempt to use integrated graphics, which is Counter-Strike 2. And the third game is kind of a mixture with Marvel Rivals that's still kind of demanding but can be used on some lower end stuff. So let's go back to the questions. First, does it start? Because that's important. Some of these things, the drivers won't support it. And if it doesn't, or if it just doesn't have the horsepower or the ability to load the game or handle it, then that's a strike against it. Number 2, what kind of FPS does it get? Now this Ryzen 5 9600X here, this is not a powerhouse of an integrated graphics card. You can buy integrated graphics card, like I had an 8700F, a Ryzen 7 8700F, which is actually designed and created specifically for its integrated graphics use, but it's like $100 more than this card. So that would kind of defeat the purpose of a test like this where you could just buy a cheap card. Anyway, so number 2, FPS. How does it actually perform? Does it stutter? Does it get a lot of lag? Is it running smoothly? And then number 3 is actually the increase per dollar. So for each dollar that you spend, how much more are you getting an improvement? You know, are you getting a lot more FPS? Is the percentage overall significantly higher? If you're spending $80 or $120, are you getting enough money worth out of that to justify it, or should you just use the integrated graphics? So let's go ahead and get into the gameplay to see how well this integrated graphics card actually runs and compare it to how well the RX 580, which is a $75, $80 graphics card, or the 1660 Super, which is about $120, actually performs. So first up, we have the integrated graphics card, and we're going to be trying out Crimson Desert. The first question, does it start? So I went ahead and hit start, and I'll fast forward through all this for you guys, and you can kind of see how bad and laggy it is. This is probably an indicator of what's to come, but let's go ahead and take a look at some more of the gameplay. So we're in here and you can see how very choppy it looks, and we're getting 7 FPS. So I go ahead and mess with the settings thinking we can improve it. And while I'm doing that, the game crashes. So to answer the first question, does it start? No. So very quickly we can determine then that the second answer to this, the FPS, has to be 0 because the game can't actually run it. Next up, we've got Counter-Strike 2 on the integrated graphics card, and the question, does it start? Well, let's hit play. So it takes a second, and then we find ourselves in the game itself. Now, I do want to let you guys know ahead of time, I'm probably going to go pro at Counter-Strike 2 or Marvel Rivals, and a lot of this is actually just going to be my footage showcasing how good I actually am. So we can see here that it seems to be running okay. You know, I'm owning here, as is what you would do when you're attempting to go pro. You put together a showcase of your skills. And here you can see me continue to own. And I actually hit another shot here. And all the while, the game is getting pretty good FPS. Let's go ahead and showcase one last part of this where I completely dominate the game. Yep, doing some more dominating, and there we have it. So did Counter-Strike 2 start? Yes. How many FPS did it get? Well, it got 60.7 FPS on average. And on to Marvel Rivals on the integrated graphics card. Number 1, does it start? Let's go ahead and hit play. Asks us a question, goes through the loading screen pretty quickly, and here we are. It did start. So does it start? Yes. That answers the first question. Let's take a look at the gameplay. What kind of FPS are we getting and how smooth does it run? Not to mention, you know, my pro clips that I'm trying to debut. Well, first, you should check out how good I am at swinging webs and how horrendous that looked, because that was extremely choppy and not of high quality. And next up will be kind of a montage of all the epic kills that I got. So you can see here I started owning, and then again, I started owning some more, and owned a little bit more, and you can see how horrible the gameplay, not the gameplay, but the FPS looks while I'm owning here. And some more owning. I decided that I'd owned that lobby enough. You know, I'd done enough damage. So let's go ahead and take a look at the FPS. On Marvel Rivals on the integrated graphics card, we got an average of 24.9 FPS. Now, I think it's time we move on to the RX 580, which is, you know, again, $80. It's the mid-tier option of these graphics cards. Now, if you've used an RX 580 and you're familiar with Crimson Desert, you're aware of what's about to happen, but let's go ahead and try and hit play and see if this thing starts. Click the play button, and we are immediately greeted by an error that says driver update recommended. No, the RX 580 does not receive support, so it can't run Crimson Desert. Therefore, unfortunately, it gets an average of 0 FPS. Let's go ahead and get on to better news, where we're gonna go to Counter-Strike 2, because I think you're gonna be pretty impressed by what happens here. So let's go ahead and hit play. Pretty quickly here, you see that it goes through the loading and we're in the lobby. So does it start? Yes. Let's go ahead and take a look at the gameplay. What kind of FPS do we get? Is it smooth? Does it stutter? You saw in the integrated graphics card that it was pretty solid performance. But again, I think you're gonna be really impressed for what $80 does here. I just want to continue to remind you guys that I am planning on going pro, so if you're on TSM or Navi or any of those CS2 teams or Marvel Rivals teams, please check out these clips, because for real, come on guys. This first one, obviously I did some serious owning with the SGS, what gun is it called? And if you can't tell that I'm being sarcastic at this point, obviously I'm not going pro, but here was at least a half decent shot that only took me 3 seconds to register. And here we have some very smooth gameplay of me very obviously missing a standing still target. But hey, it looks pretty good, doesn't it? And I thought I'd show you guys some more really high FPS gameplay of me missing very easy shots. Because again, TSM, Navi, whoever else is out there, hit me up. I'm ready to go pro for you. So despite my terrible aim, the game actually ran tremendously well. And that brings up number 2. On the RX 580, Counter-Strike 2 got an average of 275.3 FPS, which I think we got, what, 60 on the integrated? You guys might start to notice a theme here, so just hang on with me. Let's go ahead and move on to Marvel Rivals on the RX 580. Now, I don't want to spoil anything for you here, but you may be disappointed. I'm just gonna throw it out there. So question number 1, does it start? Well, we hit play, let's see what happens now. But would you look at that? We pretty quickly got into the lobby. Now, one of the first things that I noticed with the RX 580 compared to the integrated graphics was It felt okay-ish, not okay, but okay-ish when we were out of fights. But if you take a look here, as soon as we got into any kind of action, it got pretty bad. Not to mention I was still owning in Marvel Rivals. Now this next part is a better example of how I said that when you're actually just running around and not doing too much, the gameplay was pretty smooth. I wouldn't say smooth, but it was okay-ish, smooth-ish. And here we are in an intense battle again where I'm obviously owning, and it's gotten pretty choppy once again. And here in this scene, I get to showcase some of my sweet web swinging skills. That's really hard to say, but also you'll notice, again, emphasizing that when you're not doing anything minus one dip, it seemed to run pretty smooth. So to answer number 2, it ran okay, and it had an average FPS of 27. Now before you guys go to leave some comments saying, that can't be right, the RX 580 should be running significantly better than that, you're correct. I'd found out that I had done the test with like corrupted drivers, and I reinstalled the drivers correctly this time, and it ended up performing a lot more smoothly. The problem was I didn't record any of that footage. Surprise, surprise, YouTuber forgets something. But this time it did run a lot better, and we got 121 FPS average. So I am gonna advocate for the RX 580 here. It is a lot better than what I showcased. And if you're looking for a cheap budget option, especially if you're gonna play Marvel Rivals, it was a really good experience. So disregard all of that footage that you just saw and imagine it much better in your head up here. Now, for you Crimson Desert lovers out there, I'm potentially about to get to the best news that you might have heard all year long. We're going to the 1660 Super and we're gonna test out Crimson Desert, and prepare to hold on here. So question number 1, does it start? Well, let's hit play. And up and running. Now here's where you're really gonna be impressed, because if you noticed, it didn't load on the RX 580, and it was so bad on integrated graphics that it crashed. Now, this is integrated graphics, which we're calculating is a $0 cost because you were gonna buy that CPU anyway. $80 for an RX 580. Is this mic upside down? There we go. And then about $120 for a 1660 Super. Watch how good this looks. Look at this, guys. You can see the FPS. We're getting 60, 65, running around town. Do you see that gameplay for $120? Now, of course, everything is all on low and we're just comparing integrated graphics. I'm sure you could go up to medium or high and get 40 or 50 FPS, but I will tell you this, and other YouTubers may not, that's very playable for Crimson Desert. Just throwing it out there. Anyway, more footage. Oh yeah, I ran into this guard and he didn't seem too happy about that. And here, just some more beautiful gameplay. Like, $120 gets you this kind of performance. That's pretty impressive. So number 2, FPS. Game ran smoothly. I didn't have any performance issues whatsoever, and it got an average of 60.7 FPS. So 0, 0, and 60. Let's go ahead and go on to Counter-Strike 2 on the 1660 Super. Number 1, does it start? So let's go ahead and hit play. And after some time, pretty quickly, into the lobby. If you're unaware in Counter-Strike 2, when you get into like a team deathmatch setting, oftentimes if you're the first person in, there will be bots. And the bots are very, not good. So here's me showcasing how good I am against bots and really smooth gameplay. So obviously here I'm hitting some really good shots, and then we fast forward and I hit some other really good shots, and then yeah, I hit some more good shots. I've probably made my case to make TSM or whichever team should pick me up at this point, so I'll just go ahead and tell you. Number 2, FPS. This ran really smooth at 293 average FPS on a $120 graphics card, you guys. And last but not least, we have Marvel Rivals on our 1660 Super. I think obviously we all know number 1, does it start? We hit play, we get into the lobby pretty quickly. I think that's gonna be a given at this point. Now I do want to preface this with number 2, the FPS. Obviously I made a blunder on the RX 580 and that would look a lot better, but I do want you to go back and perhaps look at the integrated graphics earlier in this video of Marvel Rivals, and now look at this footage that I'm showing you here. That's night and day difference, isn't it? I mean, just take a look at this scene earlier. Remember, if we got in any kind of an intense battle, it just plummeted into choppinessville. And here, it was still pretty solid. I mean, I think we're getting, what, 155-ish FPS right now? And here on this final clip, I thought I would just continue to showcase you guys one last time why TSM or Navi or Dignitas, are they still a team? I don't know anymore, should pick me up, because obviously I am pro at Marvel Rivals. At least pro at showing how well it runs on a 1660 Super. So to answer number 2 for the 1660 Super in Marvel Rivals, it ran amazing. And we got an average of 177.8 FPS. Pretty solid. So I think that brings us to the last number 3, the increase per dollar. So I went ahead and did some fancy math for you guys and found out the average FPS of all the games on each graphics card. On the integrated graphics card, we had an average of 28.53 FPS, which is pretty low for gameplay. And on the RX 580, we had an average of 132.3 average FPS, which is pretty solid. And on the 1660 Super, we saw an average of 177.1 FPS, which is extremely solid given the price point of that card. So then I went ahead and calculated the math of what percentage better both those graphics cards are compared to the integrated graphics on the 9600X. We found that the RX 580 was 363.7% better, and then we found that the 1660 Super was 521.8% better. So massive improvements for both of those. But I still don't know if that's the most identifiable or easy way to recognize if you do need an actual dedicated graphics card or if integrated graphics are good enough. So I went ahead and calculated how many frames you were gaining for the amount that the card costed. On the RX 580, we found that we got 103 frames for $80. And on the 1660 Super, we found that we got 148 frames for $120. Now, I actually went ahead and looked at the market average, and I found that on average, you're getting about $3 to $7 per frame in performance. So most cards, when they're new or they're coming out, that's kind of the budget range. I went ahead and did the math on this, and both cards were about $1.20 per frame. So if you're buying used, especially cards like these, I guess the question still stands. Are integrated graphics good enough, or should you get a dedicated graphics card? Now, I do want to remind you guys, I actually have a newsletter where I'll update you of the upcoming content on this channel so you can know ahead of time of what to expect, and you actually have your own input on there. You can tell me what games you want to see, maybe what graphics cards you're desiring, and I also give away PCs on there. In fact, the next video that's coming out will be a compilation of some of the giveaways I've done on this channel, and this next PC I'm giving away is going to have the 9600X.